I think faith has always been just a quiet, empowering part of my life through my military time, through many expeditions, through all the TV journey and all the survival stuff, and my own family life. It's just I never feel particularly kind of religious as such, but I learned long ago that to quietly bow the knee, bend the knee, and ask for help every day, and say sorry for things, and say thank you is a really good way to start the day. I always used to see my grandfather do that. I remember him. He was 6'6", giant of a man. And yet, even as an old man, I just remember him kneeling down beside his bed every night. And I don't know, I love that. Faith is a beautiful thing to have in life. And also a humble thing to have. You know, I think a lifetime of adventures taught me that on my own, I'm not strong. You know, everyone thinks they're strong in the wild until they're not. And then on your own, I don't think you're ever truly empowered. So I look at it as like part of the arsenal of survival for life, you know, with physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. So that light has been a beautiful thing in my life, and it continues.
I'm curious, is there a moment, either in your service or in your adventures, where that need to call on him, to call on something higher, was most profound?
Most days. You know, I think it's not just I don't know, I look back to Everest, I think, in particular, though. You know, that was such a life-changing time for me. We had 4 climbers lose their lives up there. We had 2 died of the cold, 2 fell to their death. And, you know, we were on that mountain a long time, some 3.5 months in total. And I don't know, I always remember I just had a little verse I always kept laminated in the sole of my shoe that says, "Be sure of this, I'm with you, even to the ends of the earth." And I don't know, that's my faith. I keep it pretty simple. I hold on to a few basic things. And it's definitely helped me there. But it's also helped me so much in everyday life. And I think it's one of the reasons I wrote this book is I realized so few people know the real story of Jesus, you know, and myself included. I always grew up with a really sanitized version of it. He was always very meek and mild and nice and long robes. And a few years ago, I took a small team, motorbikes, tents, parachutes. We traveled through Israel, and I wanted to kind of redo the journey of Christ, to go to all the places. And at the end of that, I just kind of thought, why is it that everyday people just seem to love this guy? All they want to do is be with him, touch the hem of his cloak, you know, be near him. And yet the religious elite feared him so much. And it was just so different to the Jesus that I'd kind of grew up with. And then I realized nobody's ever really written a book that just tells this real unsanitized story of Jesus. You know, theologically accurate, but just told as a thriller. Because so few of us read the Bible, even those of us of faith. It's hard. And we tend to know stories like the Good Samaritan or the crucifixion, but not the whole story and how it impacts our lives.
Back to the book in just one moment, the greatest story ever told. That trip you took following the life of Jesus, I'm curious, tell me a little more about that. How long did that trip take? Where did you go?
Well, it was interesting. We actually filmed it the week before October the 7th, 2 years ago. So it was like super poignant timing. But we did it for a TV show called Refugee, Renegade, Redeemer. And that was the goal of it, try and tell the real story. What was he really like? Why was he such a central figure to life ever since the last 2,000 years? What was it really about this guy, away from the religion that we sort of learn about? And it did really well. We did that on TBN. That went out. It was our #1 show of last year. But it was a kind of passion project for me. You know, I still do my day job. We're still filming. Just finished filming season 9 of Running Wild, which I love. And, you know, that's a day job. But this faith stuff has always been in my heart. And doing this book, it's been transformative for me in the sense that I've never had a response to anything I've ever done that's been as powerful as this. And I get people, first of all, the book went straight in at #1. And I have people all over the world of all different faiths and cultures write to me and just say basically the same thing, which is I had no idea of actually what the story of Christ is about and how it relates to my life. And that's been the great privilege. It's not saying my story, it's saying his story, or history, as they say. So, yeah, I'm really proud of it. Hardest thing I've ever done, but the best thing.
So you wrote it in first person, from the perspective, I believe, of, is it five different people in Jesus's life who sort of share him through their experience in their eyes. Is that right?
Yeah, so I thought, I'm just going to write it from the people who knew him best, from their perspective, what it was actually like. And everyone had such a different interaction with him, is what I learned. I mean, one of the things I did was read the Bible the whole way through a couple of times. And we worked with some top theologians from the TV show The Chosen, who were incredible, helping me make sure we get everything right. But it was so interesting just learning how everyone reacted, had such a unique experience of encountering this man. And so I thought, let's just do it from their perspectives. We start off with his mother, young, pregnant, out of wedlock, nervous, like must be so daunting to have angels appear and say, you're going to give birth to a child. You've never slept with anyone. You're going to give birth to a child who's going to be the Son of God. I'll be like, hold on. Yeah, and then we go to Thomas, who's, super skeptical of this Jesus that he meets, just going, I'm not going to be tricked by some water into wine. No, and his journey. And then Peter, who's just like all in, impulsive, like raw, wild, unreligious. And John, and eventually then with Mary Magdalene, who's this young, broken girl who Jesus transformed her life. And I think what was so telling for me is I always thought of the disciples as like these big bearded old men. It's how we kind of see them, don't we, in paintings and all of that. But
right.
Actually those that hung out with him, those disciples, who of course they weren't even called disciples, he's just band of rough misfits, regular people from a border town up north, were average age of 15 to 25, super young, like no idea really what's going on. And slowly over the course of these years, realizing they were in the presence of the Savior of the world. And it's that part of the story that has moved me so much and helped me so much in my faith, to understand that you don't have to be anything. You can have doubts. They had doubts. I mean, 98% of their story with him is of doubt. Every encounter, doubt.
Right.
And I found that reassuring, because I come from a place of like, can it really be real? And then time and time again, little things happen, that light inside, and I hold on to those moments.